My name is Nicola Danайлов, and I'm the founder and the person behind Singularity FM and SingularityWeblog.com. And we are here today to talk about the importance of cryonics. As you may have heard, the recent very unfortunate news coming out from Russia that a Russian member of parliament is perhaps trying to sponsor a private member's bill and to ban cryonics across Russia. Now, in my view, this is a very short-sighted and detrimental policy proposal, and that's true at several levels. First of all, it would create greater suffering among people who have already made a decision to try the possibility, which is, by the way, a scientific possibility, of having life extension. What do I mean by that? If you follow the international news, recently there was a big case in the United Kingdom with a 14-year-old girl that wanted to be cryopreserved because she had a very deteriorating brain cancer. And thankfully, the highest court in the United Kingdom ruled in her favor because there was a strong disagreement between the two parents, whereas her mother and her great-grandparents were willing to both support her and pay the cost for her cryopreservation. Her estranged father, who actually never spoke to her for years, and she never spoke to him for years, was against it, and he was trying to prevent that from happening. Long story short, the court in England, the highest court in England, ruled in support of that girl's case. And one of the reasons behind that was that she would die more peacefully knowing that her last will and decision, her last will and request will actually be legally fulfilled and not be prevented. So people actually who are about to die have a last peace of mind. Therefore, it diminishes suffering. Secondly, it actually provides a certain kind of chance, which is, by the way, scientifically based, and even though it's very hard to measure right now what that chance is statistically, that chance is better than zero. So if you bury yourself in the ground, or if you burn yourself in an oven, you destroy all the genetic material forever. That means that you have exactly zero chance of coming back. However, while cryonics doesn't guarantee that you will ever come back, it gives you a chance which is better than zero. And it's not a very pleasant procedure, it's not a very pleasant alternative, it's not something I'm personally very much looking forward to. However, given the alternative, it is actually much better. I'm not looking forward to be eaten by worms or to be burned in an oven. So it's not a nice process, it's not something I would be happy to do, but given the alternatives, it's the best possible outcomes. And mathematically and scientifically speaking, it gives me a possibility greater than zero, rather than the guaranteed zero of death when I'm buried or when my body is burned. Finally, that's very bad political decision on a third level in terms of technological development. There's only 3 or 4 countries in the world which right now are at the cutting edge of cryonics research. One is in the United States. Actually, 2 of them are in the United States. One is in Moscow, КриоРуса, and there's now a lot of discussion and debate happening not only here in Madrid, in Spain, but actually all over the world. So the question then becomes, do you want as a nation to be a follower and be behind the scientific development, or do you want to be at the cutting edge and be the ones who are setting the pace of development? Do you want to play catch up 10 or 20 or 30 years later on by artificially holding progress right now? Just like, for example, George W. Bush banned all funding for stem cell research for 8 years. The result of that was not that stem cell research stopped, but all the American scientists who were doing cutting-edge research in American facilities had to go do the same research abroad. One of the side effects of that policy decision was that China emerged as one of the world leaders, while previously the United States, and not only China, but even England and many Europeans picked up the pace. simply because for ideological reasons the American government refused to do stem cell research. Now we're seeing the same exact situation forming in Russia. And then the question is, do we want to follow a very bad precedent like that and then play catch-up 20 or 30 years, or do you want to support and sustain a leading institution which is at the forefront of development? And as Arthur C. Clarke says, the only way to find out what's possible is to venture a little bit beyond what we know right now to be possible into the impossible. And this is how all progress is made. All progress is made on the graves of old truths that we thought would never change. So for example, in 1897, Lord Kelvin said that humans will never be able to fly. In 1902, H.G. Wells, very famous science fiction author, said humans will never be able to fly. Two bicycle makers who never went to school and never had the money to buy those books and read H.G. Wells, or the smartest man in England, Lord Kelvin, actually proved them wrong by making their own airplane in their backyards. And we had the manned flight and the beginning of history. And in 70 years we went from the Wright brothers to the moon. And the same thing is happening right now in medicine. So do you want to be stuck in the 19th century, or do you want to look into the future and the cosmos? And I don't think that Russia actually has a good Russia actually has an excellent history of being at the forefront of science and technology. First man in space, you know, first lunar probe, first on Venus, all kinds of other firsts, and even right now it has the safest space program in the world still, which is the most reliable one, and yet we're refusing to make progress in all those other potential scientific fields which are so promising. So I say, don't look backwards, look forward, because that's the best decision not only for the people who are suffering right now, but it's also the best for your country. That's at least what I think.